Today we're going to learn more about solving quadratic functions using the square root property and completing the square. Okay, so let's start with using the square root property. Okay, so we have this quadratic expression. So the first thing that you need to do when you are solving via the square root property, you want to leave whatever is square alone. Okay, so I'm going to move the 5 to the other side, making it negative. So you have 2x squared equals 19 minus 5 is going to be 14. After that, since your goal is to leave the x squared by itself, you divide by 2 both sides, having x squared equals 7. After that, you are going to apply the square root, okay, to both sides. So we apply the square root to both sides, having x is equal to plus minus square root of 7. And this is going to be your answer. I'm going to put my answer in this form. And that's pretty much it. So using the same method for the second problem that we have, let's write that problem over here. Okay, so we have that number 2 is going to be 8x minus 9, everything squared, plus 5 is going to be equal to 1. In this case, what you want to leave alone, okay, so you can apply the square root property, is all this chunk. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the positive 5 to the other side negative, so you have 8x minus 9 square is going to be equal to 1 minus 5 is going to be minus 4. After that, what you are going to do here is you are going to apply the square root property to both sides, having 8x minus 9 is going to be equal to plus minus, and since you know that you have a negative inside the square root, is going to be 2i. Why 2i? Because you know that the square root of negative 1 is I, and the square root of 4 is 2. With this being said, the next step that you are going to have over here is going to be you pass the 9 to the other side, so you have 8x is going to be equal to plus minus 2i plus 9, and after that you are going to divide by 8 both sides. Okay, so you cancel, so what you have in this equation is going to be that your answer is going to be, and I'm going to write it in standard form, it's this. Okay, and that's it for the square root property. For number 5, what we need to do is complete the square. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to separate a little bit more the negative 3. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the linear coefficient, which is negative 1. I'm going to divide it by 2 and square it. With this being said, I have that this is going to be 1 over 4. Okay, so I'm going to add 1 over 4 to this side, and I need to add 1 over 4 to the other side. Okay, now that I have that, I can complete the square. I can have something square, and this is going to be equal to the addition of these two numbers. You know that this one is going to be negative 12 fourths, so this is going to be equal to negative 11 divided by 4. On the other hand, we know that since this is a perfect square, you know that it's going to be x minus 1/2 on this side. Now that we have that, we can apply the square root property. Okay, so since this is alone, we can apply the square root property on this side and on this side. With that, what you have is you got rid of the square. Okay, so you have x minus 1/2 is going to be equal to plus minus, and you know that this negative comes as an I. Then you have square root of 11, and then divided by the square root of 4, that it's 2. Okay, so you have this situation here. Now I can solve for x, so my x is going to be equal to plus minus I square root of 11 divided by 2 plus 1/2. Okay, now I rearrange in the standard form because you know that I like the standard form, okay, of the complex numbers. So you have 1, everything divided by 2 plus minus I root 11, and that's your answer. Now, number 9 might look a little bit more challenging because you have that negative square root of 6, but it's not. Okay, following the same idea, the first thing that I do to complete the square, I have this. I move the 2 to the other side like this. After that, I'm going to take the linear coefficient, which is negative square root of 6. I divide it by 2 and I square it. So this is going to be equal to square root of negative of 6 times square root of 6 is going to be 6 divided by 4. This, you know that it's 3 over 2, so you add plus 3 over 2 here, plus 3 over 2 here. Okay, now this is a perfect square, so you know that this is going to be x minus the square root of 6 divided by 2 square, and this is going to be equal to this is negative 4 over 2 plus 3 over 2. That's going to be a negative 1 over 2. Okay, with that being said, you are going to square root both sides. Okay, canceling the square, so you have x is going to be minus square root of 6 divided by 2 is going to be equal to, you know that this one, the top is going to be the square root of negative 1, which is just I, and the bottom is going to be the square root of 2. Of course, you don't like this, so we need to rationalize. Multiply top and bottom times the square root of 2, and you have that this is equal to plus minus I square root of 2 divided by 2. Now, I'm going to rewrite the equation. You have that x minus square root of 6 divided by 2 is equal to plus minus I square root of 2 divided by 2. Okay? Now that you have this, I can solve for x, so you have x is going to be equal to plus minus I square root of 2 divided by 2 plus square root of 6 divided by 2. After that, you know that this, we can write it everything as divided by 2. Okay, in standard form, I know that this part goes first, the real part, and the imaginary part goes second, and that's going to be your answer. Okay. For number 11, it might look challenging that you have that the leading coefficient is negative 1/2, but you can get rid of it. How? We're going to multiply everything times the reciprocal of negative 1/2, which is going to be negative 2. So if you multiply every single term times the negative 2, what you have is that negative 2 times negative 1/2 y squared is going to be just y squared. Negative 2 times positive 3 is going to be negative 6y. Negative 2 times negative 7 is going to be positive 14. And this is going to be equal to 0 times negative 2 is going to be 0. Okay, so this one looks much user-friendly to complete the square. Having this, it's making my life easier because I know that I just need to move the 14 to the other side to start my process. Okay, now following the same process as before, you take the negative 6, you divide it by 2, you square this equation. You have that this is going to be equal to negative 3 squared, which you know that it's 9. Okay, after that you put the plus 9 here and the plus 9 over here. Okay, so what you have that it's going to be y minus 3 squared is going to be equal to negative 5. Okay, so once you have this, you realize, oh, I can use the square root property. So we will use the square root property on both sides, having y minus 3 equals I square root of 5 plus minus, right? Okay, so after that, what you have, you need to solve for y. You know that y is going to be equal to plus minus I square root of 5 plus 3. And if we want to write this in standard form, I know that it's going to be 3 plus minus I square root of 5, and I'm done.